welcome. Thank you for being with us once again. Our guest today is Birgitte Messerschmidt, Research Director at NFPA. Welcome, Birgitte. Thank you for being part of the project.
Thank you for having me.
For those who don't know, Birgitte is a pioneer in the industry, working in fire safety for 27 years now. She is a member of National Fire Protection Association and has spent her life doing research and fire analysis, providing knowledge via her paperworks, conferences, webinars that she attended to, you name it. And of course, behind all this work, there is a lot of passion, data sets, lots of information, and of course, dedication. From the conversation we had with other guests, we've realized that are three major areas where from which you can enter in the fire safety field. A, you either do a bachelor's, master's, or professional course in fire engineering or fire safety. B, you can come from a mechanical, structural, chemical, or even from an aerospace background and then specialize in fire engineering. And C, you can come across the fire field by accident due to the huge market demand, and you realize that this is something bigger than only firefighters stopping fires. You can do research, you can do engineering, and you can do much more than that. I want us to step back and in time and ask you, Brigitte, which one was your way? How did you find out about the fire safety industry?
Well, since I got my degree in the early 90s, back then, and it happened in Denmark, and back then we did not have a fire engineering degree in Denmark at all. So I was actually studying structural engineering. And one of the professors that I liked the most, he did structural fire safety. So I did my master thesis with him. And that was my first introduction to fire. I was like, ooh, this is fascinating. And then as I graduated, my first job was in the National Fire Lab in Denmark. So literally hands-on experience with fire. So that is how I fell into the fire area. Definitely not something that was planned. It was, finding an inspirational professor and then lucky enough to land a job that just was really, really exciting. I was a professional pyromaniac for 5 years. I've set fire to anything from television sets to Christmas trees to boring construction products.
Wow. That's quite unusual, I have to admit. I know you work also for the European Commission in Sweden before joining NFPA in the US. So I wanted to find out what's the difference between working in fire safety in Europe versus US, NFPA, EU Commission.
Well, I've actually worked quite different. So I started in the National Fire Lab in Denmark. Then I industry. So I didn't really work for the commission, but I worked in trying to influence the European Commission to make better fire safety rules for Europe. And did that for many years while working for industry. And it's now then changing to NFPA 5 years ago, very different. It's how can I describe it the best? I thought it was complicated in Europe, where we're 20, was it 27 member states, or how many we are now, and try to figure out the rules between the different member states and so on. I thought, well, United States is just one country. It must be a lot easier. I realized it was a lot more complicated because it was 50 states that do things their own way, and then even cities within the states do things their own way, etc. So it was a different, complex landscape compared to what we had in Europe. And on the engineering side, I also found it really interesting in that Europe is very much, talking performance-based bioengineering, and that's the big thing. And coming over to the US, I realized that is not common in the same way as it is in Europe. Yes, it is used, and yes, there are definite practitioners that are doing a great job on that. But the codes and standards are much more prescriptive. in many ways than we see in many countries in Europe. So that was a part, some of the differences, and then the other difference, of course, is different amount of vacation between the US and Europe, but that's a whole other issue.
Well,
Indeed.
I can say you've been successful facing all of these challenges.
I would hope so. Yeah, I think the advantage of working at NFPA is that I see all of these challenges, and you know, it can take the strengths from Europe and the experiences from there and use it in my everyday job that I have here at NFPA, and bring some of the experiences into NFPA as we are working on things. So yeah, it's interesting having seen both sides of the coin.
I think that's your main strength, actually, because you worked in Europe and now in the US, you can see like both sides. So I think, yeah, that's,
Exactly.
yeah. And also regarding your actual work, every research, every report you've made has its importance. But which one is the most noteworthy in your vision? Which one, let's say, you like the most or liked working on the most?
Oh, that's it. That's a good question, because I mean it might spanning now, oh my God, almost 28 years, right? So I can't even remember some of the earlier ones, right? But
Yeah.
I would say of the latest work that I've did is actually the report we published last year together. I published together with Marty Ahrens about fire safety in the United States since 1980, and looking at the data and what has happened over the last 40 years, and how fire safety, seen through the data, analyzed through our fire and life safety ecosystem, see how things have changed, where we've been successful, and where we still have some challenges left. That has really been one of my favorite lately. But very early in my career, in the late 90s, I did some work that I also was really interested in around, that was fire testing and oxygen calorimetry in the laboratories, on how to test and influence of delay times and this response time on heat release measurements, etc. It's pretty exciting as well. And there's two very, very different types of research, but both of them have a high place in my heart.
Indeed. And I think documentations in general work hand in hand with the work of fire engineer, who's putting the theoretical aspects into practice essentially. So, once again, we can see how this career, fire engineering is linked to the actually theoretical side, and how researchers and engineers collaborate with each other.
I think that's an extremely important part, because fire engineering and fire science is young, which is interesting to say, because I mean, we've known fire since the caveman realized that it was a good way to stay warm, but then he also realized there was risk inherent in having fire in the cave, right? But the science behind it, and the engineering, especially design, performance-based designs, it is fairly new. And that's why it's so important that we have the science and the engineering constantly going hand in hand, so we can continue developing new tools, new methods for engineers to use to design all these amazing buildings out there, and ensuring that we still have the safety. And I think one of the things that also, to me, over my entire career has really fascinated me, and it's one of the reasons I encourage young people to get into fire engineering, is that it is a fairly small field. And therefore, you have the opportunity early in your career to be working with some of the great people in your field. It's not, you're not just some small fish that will never see the top people in your area. No, you get to meet them fairly quickly, work with them, get to very quickly get into cutting edge things. That is so fascinating, and I don't think many other engineering areas have that to the same degree. So it's one of the things I love about the fire engineering world.
I completely agree with you. And we've also concluded another important aspect, that both researchers and engineers analyze when they're doing reports, for example. In the end, it's about people and their behavior to a fire to a large extent. So I was thinking to ask you, do you have paperwork that goes in that direction? And if so, can you share with us some insights?
So you're thinking about how, the people side of fire specifically, correct?
Yes.
Yeah, so yeah, I mean it's one of the people on my team that I've been lucky to work with is Rita Fahey, who's been one of the early trailblazers in human behavior and fire, which has been really interesting to hear from her and learn from her. She just recently retired after a long stellar career, so we will miss her at NFPA, but the work related to that is so important because somebody said, I can't remember who, years ago, said we can design the most perfect buildings and great buildings, and then we put people in them, and then we have the challenges, right? Because not only are people, through our behavior and so on, can create fire risk, but then also when we have big buildings and a lot of people, the way we behave in order to get out of the building is really a critical issue. So I think it's important to keep that human factor in mind. Well, if we get too much just in the engineering science side and forget about the human science, the human part, the buildings will not function as good as they're supposed to. We really need to have that collaboration between, well, how do we want this structure to work? How do we want the interior to perform in case of fire? And how does that interact with the type of people that we have in the building? And here really ensuring that it provides fire safety for all, because we can't design buildings that are safe for people that are 19 with high mobility, etc., when we have societies around the world that are aging and in some places getting bigger, heavier, or in some places more mobility issues, etc. Everybody should be safe in fire. And that's a really important part to keep in mind as when designing buildings. So I hope that answered your question.
Yes, actually, you really did, and I am extremely glad that you shared this with us because I have to admit I did my homework before the interview, and I listened to a very interesting episode that caught my eye on the SFP YouTube channel. And from what I've understood from there, due to the improvement of the fire protection systems, fire codes and standards, fire analysis, and the list can continue, fire safety in buildings has increased and the numbers of fires has decreased. So that's fantastic, and obviously that's the purpose of this domain, to avoid any catastrophe.
That is correct. I mean, we have in both in Europe and United States been successful. We are bringing down the number of fires, or we have brought down the number of fire deaths. But also what we do see, though, the last 2 decades, especially in the US, the numbers are, flatlining. So we sort of reached a plateau, and it's difficult to get the numbers lower at this point in time. And this is where I strongly believe we really have to look at that human part of fire, because we've done a lot of stuff related to the structure, to the fire protection measures. We could do more. We could definitely have more sprinklers in the building. We could have even ensure smoke alarms are in all buildings around the world, etc., to help. But I also believe we need to look at the, how does fire hit vulnerable populations? How can we ensure that they're safe as well to the same extent? So it's definitely an interesting area as we move forward to try and look at that.
So we did manage to decrease the number of any danger over the time.
We definitely have. I mean, you can see the impact. In that, as I say, one of my favorite studies there with fire safety in the US since 1980, and that's exactly what we show. You can really see as the increase in use of smoke alarms the number of fires reported to the fire service goes down, because people are alerted to things very early and can easily take care of it themselves. You really see an impact of also, if you look at the difference between number of fire deaths per 1,000 fires in tall buildings or apartment buildings where there's higher requirements to fire safety compared to 1 and 2 family homes. There's also a difference. Actually, now we see a little bit that it goes up, more deaths per 1,000 fires for 1 and 2 family homes, whereas it's been going down continuously for taller buildings because of the stricter requirements, and especially requirements to interconnected alarm systems and sprinklers. So there's definitely an impact by our work, by the work that we do, which is great as well in this job, that you see an impact of what we do right away.
And since we are on this topic, you've mentioned earlier your latest paperwork that is one of your favorites as well, and I'm curious to find out what else do you have in pipeline?
Right now, so I mean, we always have in the pipeline here from NFPA more analysis of the fire problem, but there's a couple of areas that I really are looking at diving deeper into, if not myself personally, then working together with other researchers as well to do it through NFPA's Fire Protection Research Foundation. One of them is the cost of fire. Really trying to figure out how much is it that the fire costs, is finding the models for calculating cost benefits. Some interesting research coming out of that in the near future from the Research Foundation. Another one is the the environmental impact of fire, which I think has been overlooked for a very long time. And so we've been working also through the Research Foundation with researchers in Europe to try and make a roadmap for this, and also a first study around the emission factors. So that's also a big area, I believe, and that we have definitely more to do going forward. And last but not least, the fire problem related to vulnerable populations. We are working together with another non-for-profit called Kindling to try and identify the fire problem in vulnerable populations here in the United States as well. So those are the 3 areas that I'm right now looking at, in addition to all our traditional work here at NFPA Research.
Really keen to have a look. It's really interesting. It's really interesting. And what I can say is that we talk to students, to university professors, researchers, managers, and principals who told us about their work for the whole community, and we can see that that they're helping us prevent fires. Um, and my question for you is, do you think people outside of this field also should have a contribution in this whole process of keeping the environment safe? How can they be involved in the fire prevention matter?
So you think reaching out beyond our fire engineering community to involve more people?
Yeah.
Yeah, I think that is actually critical for us to be successful in the long run. Because what I've realized over my 28 years is that we in the fire community, we're very passionate about what we do, which is great. But we're also very good at talking to each other and all confirming to each other about what the problem is and all the great work that we do. One of the things that we need to be better at as a community is to bring in others to this and really get them to understand the role that everybody play in the safety, fire and life safety. So that's where I think we need to be better around that, and it's anything from ensuring that we have a educated public, ensure that the people that are building the buildings understand the role that they play in making that building fire safe. It's more than just the sprinkler installer that is actually doing work that's related to the safety of the building. It's everyone that's working on that building that has a role to play in the safety. So I think it's really important to think about, as we at NFPA calls it, the fire and life safety ecosystem around the safety, you know, to make sure that everybody is involved, because you cannot just have one thing functioning. You need to have all these different parts of this fire and life safety ecosystem functioning in order for us to have a the safety that we want to have in our buildings.
That's exactly what I wanted to highlight, and you helped me with this. Thank you.
You're welcome. Happy to help.
And also, I'm sure you've inspired with your research not only people from the industry, but landlords that understood the importance of a safe environment for their employees, students, even ordinary people to be aware of the fire risk in every form. So actually, you don't have to know the technical stuff, but I believe having the will to learn new information is enough. So based on that, if someone, let's say a consultant, an engineer, would be interested in contributing, even a few hours a week, how can they do that? Can they simply come and say that they're interested in doing some research work? Is that enough?
Well, that's a good question. It depends. I mean, it's volunteers and people that are always interested in working with us are always welcome. But there's many places that you can volunteer your knowledge to. I would say, even if you are a fire protection engineer and you want to contribute your knowledge in your local community, even so community groups where they meet and talk about different things, go and talk to them about the importance of fire safety and the role that each individual play in that. I think that would be really strong if we all did that. If we all reached out to where we know we can have an impact: youth clubs, sports clubs, community gatherings, whatever kind of things you have in your national tradition where you can provide information to people. If we all did that, we would definitely help making all of us safer. That is for sure, because fire is something that people seem to forget about. It's when talking to people, I often sense that people are more afraid of crashing in an airplane than they are of dying in a fire. But the risk of dying in a fire is way higher than ever crashing in an airplane. So I don't think people is aware of the actual risk unless they themselves has been exposed to it at some point in life. But what we're working towards is really ensuring that nobody exposed during their lifetime.
Where can we find some of your reports, Birgitte? Where should people get informed from?
So I would say a good place to start is really on nfpa.org. We have a lot of, first of all, if you're interested in the research side and the fire analysis side and so on, understanding the fire problem, I recommend that people go in and look under our research. There we have a lot of stuff published. It can be a little bit difficult maybe at times to find exactly what you're looking for, but then just Google or use the search function, and you'll see hopefully the help that you need to get. The other part of our website that I also would encourage people to go to if they are, want to sort of bring this information and public education to their local community, that is our public education part of our site. There's a lot of interesting stuff. There's, starting children early understanding it. There's some games on, with our lovely Sparky, that can get children to understand the importance of knowing how to evacuate a fire, what to do in case of fire. And I apologize for the noise behind me. I hope you can't hear it. Something is going on outside.
No problem.
So, it's really, there's a lot of good information there to start with that I think could help people around the world, not just here in the US.
Yeah, I think we should get more educating in this like field, because we can see like every other domain getting exposed to young kids, as you mentioned earlier, but not really fire matters. Like I haven't seen anywhere this, so I think it's important to raise awareness on fire safety.
It's one of, it's one of those things out there that when I lived in Denmark, and I grew up in Denmark, that we never got any specific training on fire safety as kids. And then having my son grow up here in the US, already when he was in preschool, so he was like 3 years old when the fire department showed up at the preschool and educated these little children about fire, and also how to see a firefighter in all his safety equipment. He sounds a little bit like Darth Vader when he comes in with his breathing apparatus on. And they learn not to be afraid of the firefighter. He's the friendly monster, because they don't want the children to run away in that situation. They want them to come to them so they can get them out of the fire. So I was so impressed with all the work that we do to educate children early here in this country. I wish they did that in every country, because it's critical to get that early understanding. Then we just need to build on it later on as well.
Exactly. Well, as you mentioned, I haven't seen this in Europe, but I'm glad that they did. They are doing it in the US, and maybe in the future in Europe. Yeah.
With our interview, we can raise awareness of fire engineering.
Yeah.
As we want.
I think one of the strong things that we have over here is Fire Prevention Week that happens every year, and it really is something that raises awareness in local communities about fire safety. I wish Europe had something similar. I think they're working on it, but I'm not sure you're there yet.
Hopefully, in a few years, we are getting there.
We'll
Yeah.
get there. Exactly.
Yeah. And my final question for you, Birgit, in your opinion, what's the most important thing someone should know before joining this field?
That you can get to work on so many interesting and different problems. It is anything from if you want to dive into combustion and the nitty-gritty of how fires happen, to how do we best get people to understand the messages to get out of the building. So there's such a wide area you can work in, which is really, really fascinating. And then the knowledge that what you do really makes a difference. It really, with the work that you do as a fire safety, fire protection engineer, you are truly making people safer. And honestly, that makes me feel good about my job every single day, because I know what I do, it makes a difference out there. So that's really what I want anyone who was considering going into this area to be aware of.
Well, yeah, heroes don't have caps all the time.
That is
So,
exactly right.
so the statistics are in our favor for the time being, guys, and we must keep it that way. We want to thank you one more time, Birgit, for your continuous work in fire safety.
Thank you.